You remember video game stores? Back in the 90s and 2000s, these stores were more than just retail shops. They were hallowed ground for gamers. From the 16-bit glory days of the SNES and Sega Genesis through the dawn of the PlayStation 2 era, walking into a game store was an experience unto itself. It was a time when browsing was an adventure, and every visit held the promise of discovering something new or exciting. So today, let's take a nostalgic journey through those magical game store days, exploring the sights and sounds of the shops, the thrill of the demo kiosks and midnight releases, the joy of trade encounters, and that warm sense of community found in both major chains and mom-and-pop retro stores. So I'm going to take you back for a minute. You push open the door to your local game store and are immediately greeted by that rush of cool air and the distinctive new game smell. It's a mix of fresh plastic, ink from game manuals, and electronics. The walls are plastered with colorful posters of the latest releases. One might be a giant Super Mario 64 mural, another a dramatic Final Fantasy VII standee. Shelves and racks are lined with game boxes, vibrant Super Nintendo and N64 cartridge boxes in the mid-90s, and later the neat rows of PlayStation CD cases and PlayStation 2 DVD cases in the 2000s. Cover art alone could captivate you for minutes on end. Whether it was a bold golden logo of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, or the futuristic sports car on a Gran Turismo cover, every box beckoned with promises of adventure. And as a kid, or teen, or even adult in that era, you could happily lose track of time just browsing. The sounds of the game store were just as enchanting as the visuals. There was usually a game console or two set up in the corner, demo kiosk pumping out catchy theme music or sound effects. You'd hear the tinny demo of Sonic the Hedgehog running on a Sega Genesis, or the roaring engines from a Cruisin' USA arcade cabinet. In the late 90s and 2000s, you might catch the menu music of Halo or the upbeat tunes of Pokemon on a Game Boy demo unit. Kids would gather around these stations, eyes wide and hands glued to the controllers, often swapping turns with friends or friendly strangers. Over by the counter, you'd hear the chatter of employees enthusiastically debating which new RPG or shooter was worth your money this month. Sometimes they'd be on the phone with another customer, holding that last copy of Chrono Trigger or Metal Gear Solid for someone who called in begging them not to sell it before they arrived. It was an audio tapestry of excitement and anticipation. If you were around during those times, I hope this little section brought you back to the great times of video game stores. I think one of the most magical parts of the 90s and early 2000s game store visit was trying out those demo kiosks we were just talking about. Before YouTube trailers and instant downloads, this was often your first chance to actually play the newest games. Stores would have display units, often with a console bolted down and controllers attached by cords. This invited you to give a new game a test run. If you grew up in this time, you probably remember craning your neck up at a TV screen mounted high, hands gripping a controller as you tried a level of the newest hit. Maybe you guided Mario through Bomb Battlefield in Super Mario 64, or tried to land a 900 in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, while some kid waited behind you for his turn. It was interactive advertising at its best. You'd walk in bored on a Saturday, and walk out begging your parents for the game you just sampled. These kiosks were true magnets for young gamers. Often a small crowd would form around them, onlookers giving tips or oohing and aahing at the graphics. In the 90s, seeing a 3D game like Mario 64 or Crash Bandicoot in action for the first time this way was mind-blowing. And even in the 2000s, demos like Halo or Soul Calibur could draw a crowd. The demo station wasn't just about playing, it was a social hub. You'd chat with the person next to you about whether the game was cool or boast that you had read in a magazine about a secret move. Sometimes the stories had multiple kiosks, one for a Nintendo console, one for Sony, maybe a Game Boy or DS you could try out. The controllers were often grimy from hands, and sometimes the staff would remind you to be careful, but it all felt like part of the experience. Trying a game in-store was a tantalizing preview, and if you were lucky enough to have your parents with you, it was also the perfect chance to convince them to buy it for you. Demo kiosks encapsulated the try-before-you-buy excitement that modern gamers raised on digital downloads might not ever fully understand. In the late 90s and 2000s, major chain game stores became staples of malls and shopping centers, and for many of us, they were the go-to spots to feed our gaming passion. Shops like GameStop, EB Games, FuncoLand, or if you're as old as I am, Babbages, were practically sacred ground. These places had a particular vibe: the carpeted floors and bright fluorescent lighting, the walls lined with games sorted by console, and glass display cases at the counter showing off shiny new hardware or rare used games. Visiting one was often the highlight of a trip to the mall. You'd make a beeline there while your parents were off in other stores, and they knew exactly where they'd find you later, glued to a Game Boy Advance demo unit or chatting with the store clerk about the next Pokemon release. The chain stores were also where we learned the art of pre-order and trade-in. Employees would ask you if you wanted to reserve a copy of an upcoming game. Put $5 down and we'll hold your copy of Final Fantasy X on launch day. Pre-ordering felt like a guarantee that you'd be part of gaming history on day one. Then there were trade-in counters, a defining feature of shops like GameStop and FuncoLand. How many of us remember the ritual of trading in games? You'd gather a stack of your old titles, maybe reluctantly parting with a beloved Street Fighter II cartridge or a beaten-up copy of Gran Turismo 2, and bring them to the counter. The clerk would inspect each disc or cartridge, maybe clucking at any scratches, and then announce how much store credit you'd get. Often it was laughably low, like trading 5 games might barely afford you one new one. But as cash-strapped kids, the store credit was the golden ticket to something new. Taught us the painful lesson of depreciation. Like, what do you mean this Pokemon Blue copy is only $7? But also the joy of walking out with a brand new game partially financed by older adventures. Game stores truly allowed us to buy, sell, and trade our way through our hobby, cycling our collections to experience more. These chains were everywhere, and each had its own quirks. FuncoLand, for example, was known for handing out a printed price list of every game they sold. Pages and pages of titles with their trade-in values. Essentially a giant menu of gaming goodness that you could take home and pore over. EB Games often had a big PC games section, with towering boxes for titles like Doom, Myst, or Warcraft 2 on display. GameStop, which eventually absorbed these older chains, became synonymous with the gaming lifestyle in the 2000s. Many of us have fond memories of chatting up the store employee for tips or hearing their recommendations. They might upsell you on a Game Informer magazine subscription at the register, which, to be fair, often came with a cool discount card, but we hardly minded. Being surrounded by games and gamers was comforting. On the shelves, you'd find strategy guides for sale, big glossy books promising to reveal every secret of games like Ocarina of Time or Grand Theft Auto. I have fond memories of standing in a GameStop and just flipping through strategy guides, knowing full well that I would not be buying them. One of the peak experiences a game store could offer was the midnight release. This was the moment when the hotly anticipated game would go on sale at 12:01 a.m., and fans would line up late into the night for the privilege of being the first to play. I remember sitting outside with my buddy for the midnight release of Wrath of the Lich King, which we went home immediately and stayed up all night playing. These events were part purchase, part party. At big mall stores or GameStop locations, launch night could turn the storefront into a festival. You'd drive by and see a crowd of gamers wrapped around the building. There was a camaraderie in these lines. Strangers became friends as you traded stories to pass the time. When doors finally opened and that shiny new game or console was in hand, the atmosphere was pure celebration. Store staff would often cheer for the first customers walking out with their prize, and everyone in line would holler and clap. Think back to October of 2000, where the release of the PlayStation 2 had people forming giant lines. In later years, midnight launches for games like Halo 2 or Halo 3, Grand Theft Auto, or Call of Duty drew hundreds of fans out into the night. These were events where you might bump into school classmates or work colleagues, all bound by the same giddy excitement. And once the sales began, it was a rush. Cash registers ringing, staff calling out names for pre-orders, people leaving with giant smiles, clutching their new game like it was a precious treasure. For many of us, attending a midnight release was a rite of passage. It meant you were part of the hardcore crowd, the ones who couldn't wait for another minute. There was something surreal about driving home at 12:30 a.m. with a copy of Halo 3 or World of Warcraft in your hands, knowing that while the rest of the world slept, you were about to embark on a grand adventure till sunrise. The memories of those late-night drives home, resisting the urge to open the game box at red lights, then finally peeling off the shrink wrap at home in the glow of a TV, are truly unforgettable. In the era of the 90s and 2000s, midnight launches were proof of how gaming could bring people together, turning a simple sale into an unmissable event. The 90s and 2000s truly were a golden age when it comes to the magic of game stores. Whether you were trekking to your local mall's GameStop to trade in last season's hits for a new adventure, or wandering into a hole-in-the-wall independent shop and unearthing a retro gem, each visit was filled with excitement and a sense of community. These memories aren't just about buying games, they're about the experience that surrounded gaming in that era. Game stores were a place of pilgrimage, where the journey was as rewarding as the destination. They were social spaces, learning spaces, and in many ways, dream factories for young gamers. Today, the landscape of gaming has changed, but for those of us who grew up in the 90s and 2000s, we'll always recall that special time when game stores were truly magical. The neon lights, the midnight crowds, the towering shelves of games and guides, all of it lives in our memories, a reminder of the joy of an era gone by. Thank you as always for watching. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend it with me. While you're here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want more videos like this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I love you. Bye-bye.